Alien girl invites me into her hut to warm up, but she's not as innocent as she appears. HFY, Sci-Fi. It was a cold night on the barren planet of Threx, the wind howling through the cracked rocks like a mournful ghost. I had been stranded there after a freak accident with my ship. My communication equipment was down, and my chances of being rescued were slim. If not for the strange, uncharted terrain of this world, I might have already resigned myself to survival. But something told me that I wasn't alone. The odd green glow from the nearby hills seemed too deliberate to be natural. I was wandering, half frozen, when I saw it, a small hut nestled in the shadow of a ridge. The light from within flickered in the night, warm and inviting. I hesitated. In my condition, trusting the unknown seemed reckless, but the alternative was the freezing wilderness. I made my decision. Approaching the door, I hesitated just long enough to knock. A moment later, it opened. There, standing before me, was a woman, or at least, she appeared human, though I could tell immediately she wasn't. Her skin was a pale shade of green, smooth and flawless, and her eyes were huge, liquid pools of violet. A crown of glimmering blue stones rested on her forehead, and her long silver hair cascaded down her back like the tails of a comet. Despite her otherworldly appearance, she offered a warm smile. "You're cold," she said, her voice lilting and melodic, yet carrying an edge of curiosity. "Come in." I stepped inside, grateful for the warmth. The hut was modest, but cozy, furnished with alien furniture I couldn't quite recognize, though everything seemed purposefully placed, as if her home had been crafted with care. There was a low fire burning in the center, casting a soft, golden light on the walls. "Thank you," I said, removing my gloves and letting my hands thaw out. I was trying to keep my composure, but the chill had seeped too deep into my bones. She handed me a bowl of some steaming liquid, the smell strange but appetizing. "What's this?" I asked. "Something to warm you," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I hesitated. I didn't trust her entirely, but my hunger and the cold won out. I took a sip. It was hot, sweet, and slightly bitter, a flavor I'd never encountered before, but it immediately made me feel better, the warmth radiating through my body. "Where am I?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "How did you find me?" Her smile faltered for a brief moment, her violet eyes narrowing ever so slightly. "You were easy to find," she replied, her tone slipping into something more mysterious. "I've been watching you for a while." "Watching me?" My mind raced as I studied her more closely. I had no memory of being followed, but the words echoed in my head. Something about the situation felt off, though I couldn't put my finger on it. Was I being lured into some kind of trap? I set the bowl down, suddenly wary. "What do you want?" Her smile returned, but this time, it was different, more confident, more knowing. "I wanted to help you," she said, her voice soft but filled with a hidden meaning. "But I also want something from you." I stood, my instincts screaming that I needed to be ready for anything. "What do you want?" I repeated, my hand edging toward the weapon strapped to my side. She stepped closer, her eyes glowing with an almost predatory gleam. "I want to know what it's like to be you." The words hung in the air, their implications heavy. Before I could react, she placed a hand on my chest, and a wave of warmth rushed through me. I froze, my heart pounding as her touch sent tingles across my skin. But there was something else, a strange, unsettling energy pulsing through her fingers. "You're so different," she murmured, her voice tinged with awe. "I've never felt anything like it." I pushed her hand away, stumbling back in shock. "What the hell are you talking about?" The alien girl simply smiled, but now I could see the hunger in her eyes, literal hunger, as if she were savoring a meal before it was devoured. "I thought you would understand," she whispered. "You're human, a rare thing in the galaxy, and we have needs." I could feel the tension thickening in the room. A part of me wanted to run, but I knew she was fast, and with the snowstorm outside, my chances of survival in the wilderness were slim. She might be my only way off this rock. My mind raced. I had learned about the strange biology of alien races. She might not look dangerous, but she was something else. Perhaps her needs weren't just curiosity. Perhaps she needed more than warmth. "Listen," I said, trying to stay calm. "I'm not interested in whatever you're offering. If you're thinking of taking something from me, you're going to regret it." Her lips parted in a soft laugh. You're so much like them, she said with amusement, a playful glint in her eyes. But you're not as different as you think. Before I could respond, she moved with blinding speed, closing the distance between us in an instant. My hand shot to my weapon, but she was faster, her grip stronger than any human I had known. And then, she whispered something I never expected. I'm not your enemy, human, I'm the future. Her eyes glowed again, and the warmth inside me intensified, far beyond anything a fire could provide. It wasn't just heat, it was power. And in that moment, I realized that this alien girl wasn't just some innocent traveler. She was something far older, far more dangerous, and she was curious about what humanity had to offer. But I was human, and if she wanted a taste of us, then she'd have to reckon with our resilience, our will to survive, no matter how many worlds we had to fight for. I met her gaze, daring her to make the next move. This was far from over. END. Alien girl invites me into her hut to warm up, but she's not as innocent as she appears. HFY, Sci-Fi, continued. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears as her fingers gripped my wrist, her strength overwhelming for someone who appeared so delicate. Her violet eyes flickered, gleaming with something primal, almost as though she were tasting my fear, savoring it. I wasn't sure what kind of power she wielded, but it was clear I was no match for her in a physical confrontation. My mind raced, trying to come up with some strategy. Escape wasn't an option, not with the storm raging outside, and definitely not with her blocking the exit. Let go of me, I growled, voice barely a whisper beneath the pressure of her touch. Her lips curled into a knowing smile, but she didn't release me. Instead, her gaze flicked down to my hand, still hovering near my weapon. You're considering using that, aren't you? She asked, her voice a dangerous purr. But do you really think it will stop me? I clenched my jaw, the weight of my decision pressing down on me. The blaster at my side was my only defense, but I was beginning to understand that her power wasn't one that could be neutralized by firepower alone. I had to outthink her, outwit her. Why don't you tell me what you really want? I said, my voice hardening with defiance. Why all the games, the helping me act? Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, and for just a moment, I saw something darker in her eyes, something that made my gut twist in unease. I do want to help you, she replied, voice soft but chilling, but I also want to understand you. You're kind. Humans. You're so different from us, so fragile yet so resilient. You have a spark that the other species don't. She paused, as though contemplating her next words carefully. It's intoxicating. She stepped back a few paces, releasing my wrist but not entirely retreating. Her eyes locked onto mine, her gaze unwavering, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something, sympathy, or was it manipulation? I couldn't tell. I'm not like the others you've met, she continued. You think we're just alien, that we don't understand your kind, but the truth is, I've watched humans for eons. I've seen your wars, your triumphs, your failures, and I admire you. She took a slow step forward, her voice softening. But I'm not just here to study you. I want to learn from you. I want to understand the part of you that survives, even when everything is against you. I narrowed my eyes. And what do you think you'll find? Some secret? Some magic you can steal? Her lips curled again, but this time it wasn't a smile, it was a grim expression of recognition. You're right, there's no magic. But there is something about your people, something that intrigues me. Her tone became darker, more serious. It's the way you fight, the way you adapt. You don't just survive, you thrive in the worst of conditions. I felt a shiver crawl down my spine as her words hit too close to home. She was right. That was what made us human. We adapted. We weren't the strongest or the smartest, but we were survivors, and that made us dangerous, even to creatures like her. So, what, you want to study us? Is that it? I spat, bitterness creeping into my voice. Her expression softened again, but the edge in her eyes remained. I want more than that. I want to become more. She stepped closer, the air between us thick with tension. I want the strength that comes with human survival. I want your resilience. Before I could react, she reached for me again, but this time, her hand didn't land on my arm. Instead, she placed it on my chest, just above my heart. The warmth that spread from her touch was unlike anything I had ever felt, intense and all-consuming. I felt myself falling into the sensation, my mind starting to cloud. Something about it made me dizzy, like I was losing control. Then, just as quickly as it started, the sensation stopped. I staggered back, breathless and disoriented. What did you do? I gasped. She stood still, watching me with those unnerving violet eyes. I didn't take anything. Not yet. Anyway, there was a hint of amusement in her voice, but it was tinged with something darker, something more calculating. But now I understand. You are the key, the source of that adaptability. If I can tap into that power, I could become something far greater. I didn't wait for her to say more. Without thinking, I yanked my blaster from its holster and aimed it directly at her. You're not getting anything from me, I said, my voice shaking but determined. And if you think I'll just let you feed on me. She raised a hand, and before I could react, the blaster flew from my hand, skidding across the floor as if an invisible force had yanked it away. I froze, my heart racing. What the hell? She chuckled softly. I told you, I'm not interested in killing you. I want something more, something that will make me stronger, something that only your kind can give me. Don't you dare touch me again. My voice was firm now, filled with a quiet anger I hadn't known I possessed. I won't be your experiment, and I sure as hell won't be anyone's meal. The alien girl's eyes flickered with an emotion I didn't quite understand, something between admiration and hunger. You're so stubborn. It's almost beautiful, she murmured. It's why I can't just let you go. My grip on my composure tightened. I couldn't back down. Not now. If she wanted to learn about humans, then she was going to learn that we didn't roll over. We fought. We always fought. You'll regret underestimating us, I said quietly. Humans don't give up that easily. She took a step back, her fingers tracing the edge of the table, as if weighing her options. Then, slowly, she met my gaze, her expression unreadable. You may be right, she whispered, almost to herself. Maybe, you are more dangerous than I thought. The tension between us was palpable. She wasn't ready to give up, and neither was I. It was a game of survival now, one where neither of us was willing to yield. But I knew one thing, this wasn't just about warmth anymore. It was about who would control this world, and it was clear, she was about to learn the true meaning of what it meant to be human. END. Alien girl invites me into her hut to warm up, but she's not as innocent as she appears. HFY, Sci-Fi, continued. The silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken words and the palpable tension of two predators circling each other. Her gaze was intense, almost calculating as she assessed me. Like I was a puzzle she was desperate to solve. I couldn't shake the feeling that, for all her beauty and poise, she saw me as something less than human, something to be studied, dissected, maybe even consumed. Her previous words about wanting to understand humanity kept echoing in my mind. You're still underestimating us, I said again, my voice steady despite the uncertainty gnawing at my gut. We're more than just survival. We're a force. She tilted her head, that strange smile returning to her lips. And yet you struggle so much. I've watched your kind for centuries, fought alongside your soldiers in the stars, observed your species adapt to impossible odds. It fascinates me. She took another step forward, though this time I didn't flinch. But it's more than just survival, isn't it? It's the way you fight against fate. You don't just roll over when things get hard. You push back. You innovate. I shook my head. She was starting to speak as though she admired us, as though she had some twisted respect for humanity. But I could feel the danger in her words. She might admire us, but she didn't understand us. She didn't understand what it meant to be human. Respect doesn't mean control, I said, my voice tight. You can't just take what you want. Her eyes sparkled, and for the first time since entering her hut, she looked genuinely intrigued. Is that what you think? That I'm trying to take something from you? She stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. You're wrong. I'm trying to give you something. Something you've never had before. I stepped back, the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. What are you talking about? You're so focused on the physical, on survival, on fighting. Her voice dropped into a seductive tone, laced with power. But what if I could give you something that goes beyond mere survival? Something that amplifies your strength, your resilience, something that taps into that endless, burning energy you carry inside you. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I was beginning to understand. What do you want from me? I asked. my voice a whisper of suspicion. Her eyes flashed, and for the briefest moment, I saw a hunger there. Not just physical hunger, something far deeper. Something that had nothing to do with food or warmth. I want you, she said, her voice almost a purr. I want to understand what makes you so invincible. What makes you keep going when the odds are stacked against you. It's more than just biology. It's something in your spirit. Something I can't replicate. But I can take it. Take it? My heart skipped a beat. You mean steal it? She smiled, but it was colder than before. I don't need to steal it. I just need to share it. To merge with you. To experience your resilience firsthand. I recoiled. No, I said, a surge of adrenaline sharpening my senses. No way. She laughed softly, but it was rich with understanding. You think you have a choice? You're here because you're curious about me, about what I can offer, but deep down, you know that you've never encountered anything like me before. You know I'm not like anything you've ever fought. She was right about one thing, I had never encountered anything like her, but I knew what I had to do. In an instant, I lunged for my weapon, grabbing it off the ground where it had been flung by her invisible force earlier. I aimed it squarely at her chest, my finger itching on the trigger. She didn't move, her expression softened, almost as if she pitied me. You can shoot me, but it won't stop what's coming. You can't stop what's already begun. I swallowed hard. Her words rattled me, but they also gave me clarity. She wasn't just after my body or my mind. She wanted something else, something that could reshape everything I knew about humanity, and I wasn't about to let that happen. You don't know who you're dealing with, I said, the weight of my words heavy with the determination I felt. You think you can just take us, manipulate us, change us? You're wrong. Humans don't surrender. She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. No, you don't surrender. That's why I admire you. But you're missing the point. Her voice was softer now, almost sad. You don't understand how much more there is to be gained. Imagine merging with a power far beyond your wildest dreams. No more struggle. No more fear of the unknown. I shook my head. What you're offering isn't power, it's control. And I won't be a part of that. Not for you. Not for anyone. For the first time, I saw her mask slip, and the raw desire in her eyes flickered. She had underestimated us. She thought she could manipulate, cajole, and pull humanity into her grasp. But I knew better. It wasn't just about surviving anymore, it was about preserving what made us human. That fire, that defiance, that will to never back down. Her expression shifted. The allure faded from her face, replaced by something sharper. You're right, she said, her voice low. You humans never back down. But you're too stubborn, and that's going to be your undoing. She took a step back, her hand raised, and the temperature in the room dropped in an instant. The air crackled with tension. She was preparing for something, and I wasn't about to wait around to find out what. Without warning, I fired. The shot rang out, and the force field she had been generating absorbed the blast without a sound. I could see the shock in her eyes, but I wasn't done yet. I had one last move. I dropped to the ground and rolled behind a table, using it as cover. The sound of her voice filled the air, but this time, it was full of anger. You will regret this. I will have what I want. Human, you will give it to me. I gritted my teeth. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The battle had only just begun. END. Alien girl invites me into her hut to warm up, but she's not as innocent as she appears. HFY, Sci-Fi, continued. The air in the room was thick with tension as I crouched behind the table. My pulse racing. I could hear the alien girl moving, but her footsteps were eerily silent. The silence stretched on, hanging like a storm cloud, and I knew she was planning her next move. She had underestimated me, and that was something I intended to use to my advantage. I couldn't rely on conventional weapons. She had proven she was more than capable of blocking them. But I knew something she didn't. Humans adapt. And right now, I needed to outthink her. My mind raced. I had seen enough of her powers to understand that they were based on energy manipulation. That glow in her eyes, the way she effortlessly controlled my blaster, she could wield power in ways I couldn't even begin to comprehend. But there had to be a weakness. There always was. I needed to disrupt her focus. I needed to distract her. I glanced around the room, looking for anything that could give me the edge. There, on the wall, an array of strange crystals. glowing with an eerie green light. They seemed to pulse with energy, and I realized they were tied to her power. If I could destroy or disrupt them, maybe I could sever her control. My heart raced as I formulated my plan. I had no idea how these crystals worked, but I knew they were important. If I could cause them to short-circuit or destabilize, it might disrupt her powers just long enough to escape. I slowly reached for a small piece of debris from the floor, something I could throw to create a distraction. But before I could move, I heard her voice, smooth and deadly. "You're still hiding," she said, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "You can't run forever." I swallowed hard. My options were running out, and I had to act now. I hurled the debris toward the far corner of the room. It clattered across the floor, and for a split second, her attention snapped toward the noise. That was all I needed. I lunged toward the crystals, grabbing a shard of metal that had been lying nearby. I aimed for the closest one and slammed it against the glowing surface. The room shook with a violent burst of energy, and for the briefest moment, everything went dark. The air crackled with static, and I felt my chest tighten, like I was being squeezed by an invisible hand. The crystals flared bright, their glow intensifying before flickering out completely. The surge of energy that had been filling the room dissipated in an instant, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. For a moment, I thought I had failed, but then I heard her gasp, and the pressure in the room suddenly lessened. Her control was slipping. What did you do?" Her voice was a mixture of shock and anger, and I could hear her moving frantically in the dark, searching for something to regain her hold. I didn't waste a second. I grabbed my blaster off the ground, and without hesitation, I fired again, this time aiming at her. The shot hit its mark, grazing her shoulder, and she staggered back, a look of disbelief on her face. You're not what I thought you were," she said, her voice filled with a strange mix of admiration and frustration. "You're not fragile." I took a step forward, my resolve hardening. Humans aren't fragile. We're adaptable. We fight. We survive. She took a deep breath, her eyes flickering between anger and curiosity. "You've won this round," she said, her tone surprisingly calm now. "But you still don't understand. What I want from you, it's not just your survival instinct. It's everything." "You'll never get it," I said, keeping my blaster trained on her. "And you'll never break us." She seemed to consider that for a moment, her eyes narrowing as if weighing the outcome of this encounter. "Maybe not," she said softly, almost to herself. "But I will keep watching. I will keep studying you, human, because there's something about you that I can't ignore. Something that I will learn, one way or another." I knew she wasn't gone for good. I could feel it in the way her presence lingered in the room, the hunger in her gaze. But for now, I had the upper hand. I had disrupted her control, and for the first time since I entered this hut, I felt like I might have a chance to escape. "You won't get another chance," I warned, backing toward the door. "The next time we meet, it won't be like this." She said nothing as I made my way out of the hut, her gaze following me with an unsettling intensity. I didn't dare look back. The storm outside was still raging, but I was no longer as afraid of it. I had proven that I could survive, even against something as powerful and unpredictable as her. I would find a way off this planet, and I would make sure she never got close enough to try anything like that again. I didn't know what her true intentions were, but I was certain of one thing: she had underestimated humanity. She thought she could control us, that she could bend us to her will, but she had no idea what we were capable of. This was far from over, but I was ready. And next time, I wouldn't be running. END. Alien girl invites me into her hut to warm up, but she's not as innocent as she appears. HFY, Sci-Fi, continued. The wind howled as I stumbled into the thick snow outside the alien girl's hut. My breath came out in shallow gasps, and the cold bit into my skin, but it didn't feel as harsh as it had before. The storm still raged, but my pulse had steadied, my mind focused now more than ever. The blast from my blaster had grazed her, but she was far from finished. In fact, I could feel her presence just beyond the edge of the trees, watching me, waiting for the right moment to strike. I couldn't afford to let my guard down, not now. I moved quickly, but cautiously, my mind still racing. The storm might have been her idea of a trap, but it wasn't going to keep me from escaping. I had to get to my ship. The alien girl had seen my resilience, and she'd tasted a bit of what it meant to cross humanity, but she was far from understanding just how deep that resilience ran. She didn't know how far we could push until we reached the breaking point and kept going. The snow crunched beneath my boots, and I pushed myself harder, trying to ignore the ache in my limbs. But as I neared the tree line, I felt something shift in the air, a ripple in the atmosphere, an unnatural static crackle that sent a chill down my spine. She was coming. I picked up the pace, running now, forcing my legs to move faster, the trees blurring around me. In the distance, I saw the outline of my ship, half buried in snow, almost there. Then, I heard the sound of her voice. It was soft at first, like a whisper carried by the wind, but it cut through the snow and ice, clear as day. "You can run, human," she said, her voice cold, but laced with a dangerous edge. "But you can't escape me." I didn't stop. I wouldn't. I wasn't going to let her catch me. But then, I felt it. A pressure. Something pushing against me from all sides. It was subtle at first, like the weight of the storm intensifying, but it grew rapidly stronger. My breath caught in my throat as I felt my body slowing down, my legs becoming heavier with each step. The world around me seemed to slow, like I was trapped in an invisible grip. I tried to move faster, but it was no use. It was as if the very air had turned against me, pulling me back, forcing me to stop. Panic began to rise, but I bit it back. I wasn't about to let fear control me again. I turned, looking behind me through the snowstorm, and saw her standing in the distance. Her violet eyes gleamed in the storm's haze, a dark silhouette framed by the swirling snow. She was using her powers again, manipulating the very air around me. "I told you, human," she said with an eerie calm. "You can't outrun me." I clenched my fists, still trying to move, trying to break free of whatever energy she was using to bind me. "You don't understand," I snarled. "We don't surrender. Not even to you." Her eyes flashed with an emotion I couldn't quite place. It was almost like curiosity, but there was also something darker beneath it. "I told you," she said again, softer this time. "It's not about surrender. It's about control." I knew what she was trying to do. She wanted to break me, to make me submit to her, to make me realize that no matter how hard I fought, I would lose. She wanted to dominate me, to absorb the strength I had fought so hard to preserve. But what she didn't realize was that there was more to humanity than just sheer strength. It was in our will, in our ability to keep going when everything else tells us to stop. I closed my eyes for a moment, focusing on the pull of the air around me. I could feel the pressure, feel the weight she was imposing on me. But there was something else, a flicker of power inside me that had always been there, a strength forged by the struggles of my kind. It wasn't about fighting her power directly, it was about finding the crack in her grip, the moment of weakness. I focused all of my energy into one thought, freedom. Then, I let out a sharp breath, pushing outwards with everything I had. The air shifted. I could feel the pressure loosen slightly, just enough for me to move again. I ran. For a moment, I wasn't sure if it would work. I wasn't sure if she was just going to pull me back with another wave of her energy, but something shifted in the air around me, like a shield had dropped, and the world around me felt a little less suffocating. I ran harder, faster, until I reached the ship. My hands fumbled with the controls, but I didn't care. I had to get off this planet. I had to survive. As the engines roared to life, I took one last look out of the window, back toward the alien girl. She was still standing there in the storm, watching me. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes glowed with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't know what she was planning, but I knew one thing for sure, she wasn't done with me. I blasted off into the atmosphere, the harsh winds of the planet's storm still trying to drag me down. But I was free, at least for now. I didn't know what she would do next. I didn't know how far she would go to get what she wanted, but I had no intention of giving it to her. She had thought she could control me, break me, learn from me, but she hadn't counted on one thing: humans never give up. We don't stop, we never surrender. And we sure as hell don't let anyone, alien or otherwise, take our humanity from us. END. Alien girl invites me into her hut to warm up, but she's not as innocent as she appears. HFY, Sci-Fi, continued. The stars stretched out in front of me as my ship blasted through the storm's atmosphere. leaving the planet behind. My heart was still pounding, and I had to force myself to calm down, to focus. I was no longer on the alien world, but I wasn't safe yet. The encounter with the alien girl, or whatever she was, had shaken me more than I cared to admit. I had narrowly escaped, but I knew it wouldn't be the last time I encountered her. The look in her eyes, the strange fascination she had with me, it wasn't just about survival. She was studying me, probing for something deeper, something more. I could feel it. As I steered the ship into the black void of space, I checked my navigation system. My course was set for a nearby space station, one I knew was far enough from the planet that she couldn't follow me immediately. I needed time to regroup, to think. But as I pushed the ship's speed higher, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me, that, somehow, she was still out there, waiting. A beeping sound broke my concentration, and I glanced at the control panel. An alert. I tapped a few buttons, pulling up a scan of my surroundings. My blood ran cold. A small, fast-moving object was tailing me. It wasn't a ship, at least, not one I recognized, but it was moving at an incredible speed, far faster than anything I had on board. I cursed under my breath. I hadn't gotten away at all. I quickly initiated evasive maneuvers, twisting the ship left and right, trying to throw off the tracker. The object mimicked my movements perfectly, staying right behind me. Whoever, or whatever it was, it knew how to follow me. The thought hit me like a cold slap. She had followed me. The alien girl. She had never let me escape. A chill ran down my spine as I realized how far she was willing to go to capture me, to study me. I'd thought I'd outsmarted her, but I was wrong. The ship's system began flashing warnings as the object closed in, and I knew it was time to act. I slammed the emergency thrusters on full blast, sending the ship into a sharp dive, hoping to shake the alien's pursuit. But she wasn't so easily outwitted. Through the viewfinder, I saw it. The alien ship, sleek, metallic, almost organic-looking, like something from a nightmare, emerged from the shadows of the asteroid field. It wasn't large, but it didn't need to be. Its design was far more advanced than anything I had ever encountered. I cursed again, my mind racing. If I could just lose her in the asteroid field, I might be able to get a message out to the nearest station. Maybe they could help. But that meant I had to hold her off long enough to get there. I toggled the weapons console, activating my ship's rudimentary defense systems, though I knew it was nothing compared to the alien tech she was wielding. But if I could land a hit, maybe I could damage her ship long enough to gain a real lead. I fired. The shots were weak, but they hit her ship's outer shields, causing a ripple in the energy field. For a moment, I thought it might work, but she retaliated instantly. A beam of light shot out from her craft, striking my ship's hull with a force that rattled me to the bone. My ship shuddered under the impact, and I gritted my teeth, gripping the controls as alarms blared. The power systems were failing. My weapons were offline. I had to think fast. There was no way I could outrun her, not in this ship, but maybe I didn't need to. I initiated an emergency shutdown of my ship systems. No engines, no shields. I cut everything, allowing the ship to coast silently toward the asteroid field, hoping I could blend in with the debris. The ship's gravity was the only thing that kept me tethered to my seat, but it was enough to give me a chance to catch my breath. I watched as the alien ship circled around, its bright lights scanning the field for me. The alien girl knew something I didn't. She knew that no matter how far I ran, I would always be caught in her gaze. It wasn't just my body she was after. She was after something deeper, something she wanted to understand, or perhaps even use. I looked down at my blaster, still in my hand. It was a tool, nothing more. But in that moment, it was all I had left. I'd been a soldier, a fighter, for most of my life. I'd been up against impossible odds before, but this was different. She wasn't an enemy I could kill with a simple shot. She was a puzzle, an enigma, and I had to outthink her. I waited, and watched. Her ship was getting closer, its scanners sweeping the debris field. I knew what I had to do. I reactivated my ship's systems, just enough to allow the engines to spool up for a single burst of speed. The plan was simple: get close enough to launch a counterattack, then jump into hyperspace before she could respond. With a deep breath, I pushed the engines to full throttle. The ship lurched forward, jerking against the zero gravity as the asteroid field loomed in front of me. But just as I began to accelerate, a sudden beam of energy shot out from the alien ship, hitting my ship's main power conduit. My control panel sparked, and I felt the unmistakable shudder of the ship's life support systems failing. I'd miscalculated. She was faster, smarter, too much for me to fight directly. In a flash of clarity, I understood. The alien girl wasn't just a predator. She was an apex being. She played with her prey, learning from them. She was testing me, seeing how far I would go before I cracked. But I wouldn't crack. I would survive. I would always find a way. As my ship plummeted toward the dark side of a nearby moon, I made a final, desperate decision. I activated the emergency escape pod and ejected, just as the alien ship prepared to fire its final blow. I watched my ship explode in the distance, a bright flash against the dark canvas of space. Then I turned, focusing all my energy on the escape pod systems. I wasn't sure where I would go from here, but I knew one thing for certain: I wasn't done yet. I would find a way to fight back. I would find a way to make her understand that humanity wasn't something she could simply control. She could chase me, she could study me, but she would never own me. END. Alien girl invites me into her hut to warm up, but she's not as innocent as she appears. HFY, Sci-Fi, continued. The pod's internal systems hummed with a steady rhythm, and I tried to steady my breathing. The cold, metallic walls offered no comfort, but I had learned long ago to find solace in the smallest things, like the steady pulse of the escape pod's life support systems. I wasn't dead, not yet. That was a small victory. I wiped the sweat from my brow and ran my fingers through my hair, trying to clear my head. My escape from the alien girl's ship had been nothing short of chaotic, and I was still coming to terms with the fact that I'd narrowly avoided death. Her technology was beyond anything I'd ever encountered, and her relentless pursuit made me realize how far I was from being safe. The pod sensors flickered on, detecting a nearby habitable system. I wasn't exactly in great shape, but I had to make my way toward civilization. I couldn't keep running forever. Eventually, I'd have to face the alien girl again, but next time, I wouldn't be so unprepared. My mind raced as I thought back to our previous encounters. What was it that made her so obsessed with me? Was it the resilience of humanity? The drive to survive no matter the odds? I sighed, leaning back against the pod's seat, rubbing my temples. I had learned one thing about her: she didn't just want to destroy me. She wanted something far deeper than just a victory over an enemy. I glanced at the small console in front of me. The scan showed a small moon orbiting a gas giant, likely a mining colony. If I could get there and refuel, I might stand a chance of getting away from her for good. But even as I thought it, the nagging suspicion returned. Was I just running into another trap? I closed my eyes for a moment, thinking back to the alien girl, her cold gaze, that otherworldly power she had, the strange, predatory grace with which she had stalked me. But there had been something else too, something in the way she studied me, like she wasn't just testing my strength, but trying to understand who I was. She had said it herself: it's not about surrender, it's about control. But why? Why was she so fixated on me? A sudden alarm broke my concentration, jerking me upright. The console flashed a warning. A fast-moving object was approaching. I gritted my teeth and set my hands firmly on the controls, ready for anything. I had no illusions. The alien girl had found me again. The pod's small communication system flickered to life with a soft beep. A message. I hesitated, then pressed the button. It was a hologram, a projection of her, standing in front of me, with the same eerie, violet glow in her eyes. But this time, there was something different about her, something more sinister. "I've been waiting," she said, her voice smooth and calm, yet with a cold edge. "I knew you wouldn't make it far. I always know." I clenched my fists, anger and fear mixing. "You won't win this time," I said through gritted teeth. "I'm not running anymore. What do you want from me?" She tilted her head, as if genuinely curious. "I want you to understand. You think you're fighting to survive, but you're not just fighting for your life. You're fighting for something more, something that I can't quite grasp yet, but I will, and when I do, you'll finally see." Her words were cryptic, but they gnawed at me. She was trying to tell me something about her obsession with me, with humanity. "I don't need to understand. I said, my voice firm. I'm not here to play your games. Her smile was small, almost predatory. Oh, but you are, and you always will be. You can run, hide, and resist, but eventually, you will face me, and when you do, I'll know everything about you. The hologram flickered, and the transmission ended abruptly. I sat there for a moment, heart pounding. What did she mean by that? What was it she wanted to understand? My resilience? My will to survive? Suddenly, it clicked. She wasn't just hunting me because I was a challenge. She was studying humanity itself. She wasn't just interested in defeating me. She wanted to learn from me, to learn about us. The way we kept fighting, kept surviving, even when it seemed impossible. And that knowledge, whatever it was, had become an obsession for her. I clenched my fists. If she wanted to understand humanity, then I'd make sure she learned exactly what we were made of. But it wouldn't be on her terms. I activated the pod's communication system again, sending out a distress signal to the nearby mining colony. It was a long shot, but I had to try. If I was going to face her again, I needed help. The sooner I could get to a station and gather more resources, the better. I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. A beep interrupted my thoughts. The colony had responded. A small freighter was on its way. I had a chance. I could hear the hum of my escape pod systems, steady now, as the pod hurtled toward the moon. But I wasn't just heading for the station, I was heading straight into the heart of the storm, where I would face the alien girl one final time. She wanted to understand humanity? I would show her. I would make sure she realized that the strength of a human spirit isn't something to be understood, it's something to be feared. END